Hello and welcome to the Sunday Short Story webcast. I'm your host, Aubrey Adrianson, and for today's episode, we're taking a little break from looking at religious texts, and instead we're delving into science. Today, I will talk about evolution, and I've recruited my daughter Aura as the audience. Her job is to react to this information with childlike curiosity, to demand evidence, and to be critical. So evolution explains how all life evolved, not began. All evolutionary scientists agree that life on this planet began as a small microscopic organism. Over time, this organism changed, became bigger, more complex. We call this change evolution. Evolution only happens when an organism changes or adapts. Organisms only adapt when changes are made to their environment. Through adaptation, this one organism evolved into other organisms that also changed or adapted. It took about 3.8 billion years for humans to evolve from that small organism. Sometimes we can observe smaller changes in other animals in our lifetime. However, it can take millions of years before those small adaptations add up enough to evolve into a new species.
What is adaptation?
Adaptation?
Well, yeah.
It's easiest to explain this with an example. First, there has to be a change in the environment. Let's say an animal eats a certain kind of plant, but the plant stops growing where the animal lives. So those animals begin to eat a different plant. The new plant is harder to digest, but over many generations, the animal's digestive system changes to better digest the plant. We call that change adaptation.
So if organisms only adapt when there is a change in their environment, is it possible that organisms don't evolve?
Theoretically, yes, that's possible. But the Earth has changed a lot since the first organism appeared, and it continues to change. There are organisms alive today that haven't changed for millions of years. But over time, all things evolve.
How do we know evolution is true? What is the evidence?
I'm going to tell you about 3 pieces of evidence we have for evolution. First, we have fossils, which, to put it simply, are the remains of dead organisms, plants, like plants and animals. If we look at the fossils of ancient organisms, we can find similarities between those organisms and organisms still alive today. And the farther back we go in time, the greater the difference between ancient organisms and those alive today. So we can see this gradual change over time. Second, if we look around in the world today, we can find many organisms that are similar to each other. A zebra is a lot like a horse, but has developed stripes for camouflage. It adapted to its particular environment. We can even look back in the fossil record and find other similar horse-like creatures. We know from this information that horses and zebras had a common ancestor, which means they evolved from the same ancient animal, each adapting to its own particular environment to survive. Third, the embryos, the first stages of a baby's development, of many different kinds of animals are very similar. From studying the embryos of humans and fish, for example, we know that humans have a very ancient common ancestor with some types of fish.
If it takes millions of years for organisms to evolve, then no one has ever seen evolution take place, right?
Right. We are not able to observe an organism evolve. However, living things with much shorter lifespans can adapt in our lifetimes. And that adaptation we've been able to observe. One important adaptation we've been able to observe is the adaptation of bacteria. You can't see bacteria without a microscope. But we know that some bacteria are adapting to antibiotics. So some bacteria, when it enters our bodies, can make us sick. We can take antibiotics to kill the bacteria. Some bacteria have become resistant to the antibiotics, so it's harder for us to kill them that way. Other scientists have introduced changes into the environment of beetles and watched over generations how they were able to adapt to the change. Also, one adaptation by itself probably isn't a big enough change to start saying that that organism has become an entirely new organism or new species. It usually takes several adaptations by a population of organisms before scientists will classify that organism as a new species. So there's a lot to learn about evolution, and I encourage everyone to go out and explore, find more information, more resources. There are resources on the Godless Family website, and keep learning.